Welcome everybody. I'm Christine Weiser with Tech and Learning. And I just want to make sure everybody knows how to navigate the Conference Hub. First of all, thank you to our sponsors, Catch On, Classcraft, FileWave, Global Teletherapy, GreatCam, Stanford Programs, and of course our association partners. So the way the Hub works, and hopefully you'll get out to explore it. So once you're logged in, you can visit a sponsor booth. You actually just go to the sponsor page, you actually visit the booth, you can do a live chat, you can do, and you can actually enter for our passport to prizes. Anyone who's done our in-person events knows we love to give away fabulous prizes at the end of the day. So you can enter a passport for a raffle for that. You can find your personalized agenda. So if you wanted to switch to any sessions, you can do that. Just go back to your My Agenda page, and then you can modify it, and then you can go through. You just have to uncheck what you checked, and then check something else if you wish to change throughout the day. Totally no problem. We have over 1,200 registrants, so please use the networking hub. And the way you do that, just go back. There's a registrant directory at the top, and you can just search by last name, and you can book a meeting. If the meeting doesn't, that time doesn't work out, I recommend just putting your contact information if you want to kind of figure out how to connect. So for this, for each of the meetings, we've got a couple presenters who will be sharing their stories, and then we open it up for discussion. So I'm very pleased right now. The topic we're doing is planning for blended learning. Every one of these topics that we're doing today could be an entire day of sessions, honestly. But we have Dr. Tracy Daniel-Hardy, who's the Director of Technology for Gulfport School District, and Dr. Sheryl Abshire, former CTO and EdTech specialist, and just, you know, amazing woman, and both two amazing women here, and Sheryl, both wealth of knowledge. And so now we're going to talk about just moving to planning for blended learning. I think most people understand that the fall probably will have some aspect of blended learning as part of it. So I believe, Tracy, you're going to kick things off.
Yes, so welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. And I just want to say, whew, do y'all feel like I feel? I feel like I can't really breathe. We've been working like crazy, and we are nowhere close to being done. And everything that we've done so far, we might have to redo because it's no longer applicable. And so, you know, where do we go from here? So it's been an interesting time. We've been forced out of our buildings and our comfort zones and into a new way of educating our students with no prep and no planning the way we normally would. And some of us did a great job while others of us struggled a bit. And so now we're all faced with what happens next. If we go back to school in August or September, for some of you, what does that look like? If we are relegated to the CDC guidelines or restrictions of 15 or 20 students per classroom, what does that look like? And then what do we do with the other 15 or 10 students that would normally be there? And how do we ensure that we are meeting all the needs of students? And how are the kids going to get to school if they can only be one kid per seat on the bus unless they're siblings in the same household? And how are we going to feed all the kids? And the biggest question, because we just had a conversation about LSU, War Eagles, and what are we going to play football? How is that going to look? So Dr. Sheryl and I are not here to answer all of those questions. We cannot answer all of those questions, but we are here to just facilitate a conversation about, you know, planning for blended learning. A blended learning approach that can help us in August and beyond. Now, we know that blended learning is not a new concept. Many of us have been using blended learning, whether we call it blended learning or not, already in our curriculum, in our schools, in our districts for years now. But we thought it was an excellent opportunity for us to have this conversation as we began to expand on our blended learning models and approaches to ensure academic success for all of our students. So that's my little spiel, and I wanted to, you know, start by making sure that we all understood what we're talking about when we say blended learning. And again, I'm Tracy Daniel-Hardy, Director of Technology in Gulfport, Mississippi, not too far from where Dr. Sheryl was when she retired. So before I go into the definition of blended learning, we can hear from Dr. Sheryl, who can tell us a little bit about her and her journey.
Thank you, Tracy. Yes, as she said, Louisiana girl, but on my way to Texas since I retired a few minutes ago, although my husband said I retired and failed at retirement because never stopped going. Still engaged in the conversation, still working with districts and states and organizations around the country, especially during these very, very trying times. As Tracy mentioned, when it seems like everything is a question mark. I spent almost 25 years as the Chief Technology Officer in the Calcasieu Parish Schools in Lake Charles, Louisiana, about 34,000 students, a rural, urban, suburban district covering about 1,046 square miles. So rather than challenges, we used to say lots of opportunities. I had a colleague tell me the other day, well, you retired just in time to miss those opportunities. But I think really all of us that have been in education, and education is our career and our life, you don't miss it, you just continue in a different mode. So now I'm doing consulting and ed tech specialist and funding specialist, E-rate specialist. I was on the USAC board for a term, so pretty engaged in that and pretty engaged with COSN and ISTE. I serve on both of their advocacy committees, so still push me. As Christine said in the interim, we had a little conversation about digital equity, Adam Fall, after his session, and we were all just raising the roof about that this technology, the blended learning that Tracy's going to start talking to us about, that's all great, but you can't do anything if you don't have a connection. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So Tracy, take off and share your screen, and let's kind of move through a little content, and then we'll get a conversation going.
All right, so I'm sharing. I'm not going to put it in presentation mode because it's going to take over this huge screen that I have and I won't be able to see you guys. But just to define blended learning, I call it a mashup between old school and new school, teaching and learning. The way we traditionally did school when I was in school, combined with a little digital or electronic connectivity, lessons, curriculum, whatever you want to call it. It's the combination of traditional face-to-face learning with online learning, where you have the physical presence of a teacher and the students while allowing some flexibility with the where, when, and how, and the use of technology. Learning face-to-face, online, or electronically in a well-planned, thoughtful manner that allows face-to-face and online electronic teaching and learning to complement each other. I think that's really important. It needs to complement each other. And sometimes, we find ourselves just throwing technology and programs and plans in that don't really complement what we're already doing, or we're using those as a fix and there's really no plan. We're buying the program to fix a problem that's happening, and that's not doing it in a thoughtful manner, and it's not doing, it's doing a disservice to our students. So in Gulfport School District, we call ourselves innovative based on what goes on in the state. We're a district of innovation, and we tend to think outside the box. And so we began talking about, what does going back to school look like? We all agree that it will not look like what it was before. We feel like that is forever changed. And while we feel that way, we understand that others feel like, oh, it's going to go right back to the way it was. And if it does, I think that's not a good thing, because we have an awesome opportunity to do things differently and to do things better. So we began planning. Our superintendent got together 2 committees to look at, one, let's use some of the technology we have and some of our great teachers to fill in some gaps, and we can use that at any time. So we got a group of teachers who would agree to work on those standards that we were most deficient in and create some video lessons, and then fill in with the other standards throughout the year. They will work on these throughout the year and make eventually becoming our own online curriculum where teachers can access it on demand and students and parents can access it on demand as well. So that was one committee. And then that committee seemed to be a subset of another committee where we were talking about how does this remote or virtual learning look? And as we began to talk, we knew that we had several things to consider, but the more we talked, the more things came up. And so here's just a list of things. And some of these things we were talking with the previous presenters and Christine during what I call the intercession. We had to look at the capacity of our teachers. What were our teachers capable of? So we are a Google district and also Microsoft Office 365, but Google, the G Suite platform is our main thing. And we've been training our teachers on Google Classroom for many years now, 3 or 4 years. And so they should be pretty good in it if they're using it, if they elected to use it. And those that didn't choose to use it because they didn't see a need, could be based on what they taught or their lack of, comfort in using the technology, didn't use it. And some of those struggled during this remote COVID-19 learning. So we had to look at the capacity of teachers and decide where we needed to fill in the gaps, what we needed to do, and how we were going to do that. We have we're blessed. We have about 6,500 students, about 500 teachers, and 2 instructional technology specialists. We know that some other districts within our state don't have any instructional technology specialists and are looking now to hire because there is a need. And we've been talking for a long time about the need in the state for instructional technology specialists. And the state has a couple, but there's no way those 2 or 3 that the state has can service all 145 districts. And sometimes the 2 that we have are not enough to service those in our district. So then we had to also look at where we were with the technology. We were not a one-to-one district where the students took the devices home. In our elementary, we were 1-to-1 per classroom. So there were enough devices for each kid in each class. And in the middle school, they were pretty close. In the high school, it was just kind of a hodgepodge of things because they do some awesome, innovative things themselves. So what they do and when they do it was a little bit different than what happens at the elementary and middle schools. And then you can continue to read the list. The tech needs. We know that we have additional needs, but if we order right now, when are we going to get that equipment? By Christmas 2020 or 2021? We know that there's a huge wait time. We also had to look at what worked for our district and what didn't work during the COVID-19 remote learning. We use Zoom, we use Google Classroom, but we realized that, and I personally realized that when, talking to little relatives, like, did you do your Zoom call today with your teachers? And they start looking, they were sleeping till 2 o'clock and missing the 1 o'clock Zoom meeting. And so we had to think about that and figure out how to overcome that. And that goes to one of the bullets there, family dynamics. What's happening at the home where, the parents are letting them sleep and they know that they have work? Are they emotionally distressed? And that's why we have emotional well-being of students, teachers, and staff, and also the families. Internet connectivity, that was a big discussion in the previous session. For students and teachers, we had some assumptions. We assumed, well, some of us assumed that all of the teachers had internet access or reliable internet access. And indeed, that was not the case. And so we had to talk about that as well. Additional tech tools that we need, training to support the additional need. And I said family dynamics earlier, community support. We definitely have to get the community support and engage them in conversations about the lack of connectivity in the different parts of not only our city, but our country. Guidance and plans from the Mississippi Department of Education. What are they telling us that we need to do, and what are we considering, and if those things are aligned? And if not, then having conversations to give us the flexibility to do what we think is best for our, our demographic of students. Do we need additional staff, funding, and the prioritization of needs? Not just the funding we have right now or the funding that is coming from the CARES money, but what does it look like 2 and 3 years down the road when this funding is not here and they make cuts? We've been through Katrina and we had lots of money after Katrina. And we were in hog heaven after Katrina, but a few years after that, it was sad. We cut salaries and we cut days and we even cut positions. So we know it's coming, and we're trying to figure out a way to prioritize the spending of this additional funds while preparing a plan for sustainability and without having to, reduce staff and, overburden people. So that's
Tracy, I think that's so important what you said about the sustainability factor, because I'm hearing the same thing. People are spending CARES money like a drunk sailor, and they're buying equipment and it is necessary and needed. But in 3 years, what's going to happen when all these Chromebooks or laptops or iPads are not functioning at capacity and can't be used for testing? And what's the sustainability plan? Because I kind of live by the rule as a former CTO, you can giveth technology, but you cannot taketh away.
That's right.
And so what are you
like
going to do? Sustainability is a conversation, and I'm really glad you brought that up in your conversation.
Well, I don't think that we could really have an effective conversation and an effective plan without considering that. But not everybody thinks like that. So that takes us to our plan. And we're not experts. I'm not here to, tell you this is what you should do. I'm telling you that this is what we are considering for our stakeholders, for our people, for our customers. And we don't even think that this is a perfect plan, because we're trying to plan for that which we know, that which we don't know, and that which we don't know that we don't know. So here it is. And we're thinking that when we start school, if we start school in August, what does that look like? If the CDC says that you have to spread the desks 6 feet apart, and make sure that we have this effective social distancing, we're thinking that we can probably get 13 to 15 kids in a classroom. So then what do we do with the rest of the kids? So we're planning to offer synchronous learning opportunities. We've invested in a piece of technology that we have used in the past. It's a swivel robot where you can put a device and follow the teacher around. And now it has a Zoom integration. And we're planning to use that to deliver live lessons, synchronous learning opportunities to students. And we feel that that would be the closest thing to being in the classroom, because we value the relationships along with the rigor in our curriculum that we provide. And we think that relationship piece is very important. So we're talking about making sure that they can see the teacher and communicate with the teacher. But we know that there are some limitations. And we talked about, I shared some of those, limitations that I fear are there in the intercession with Adam and Sheryl and Christine, is that if they have internet at home, do they have stable internet? Do they have enough to be able to support this? And we know that that's an issue, and we can't solve all of that because we can't even ensure that they all have electricity. And we wish that we could, but this is the plan. The other concern is which of our students would volunteer to do this? Because looking at our data, in order to make this work, about 1,600 of our students will need to stay at home to make this happen. So this is one option, and this is the preferred option of the district. Another option that we have as a backup plan, and this is the one that the teachers really like, the teachers on our committee really like, is to offer an every other day option. So half of the kids are there on Monday. Those that are not there on Monday in person are working on iReady, ST Math, other assignments through their Google Classroom, and then they will show up on Tuesday to meet face-to-face. And those that were there on Monday would do what those that are showing up on Tuesday did on Monday. So that is our option. How there are a lot of logistical, lot of moving parts to this. You know, we're talking about having a few teachers, you know, depending on the number of fourth grade students that will be home doing this. And then, you know, maybe adding some teacher assistants who can monitor or moderate the Zoom meeting, you know, for questions and things in the chat while the teacher is teaching. And, you know, maybe do some switching up, and then a plan for later in case we want to continue doing this for homebound students, you know, and open it up for anybody, maybe, you know, those who are being homeschooled currently or choose to be homeschooled because they're afraid to come, you know, in the buildings or, you know, anything like that, that they may be able to participate this way. So that's just kind of our plan. And we understand that we have to be flexible because at any time, anything can change this particular plan. We're hoping that we can go back to school as we were before the pandemic, but we just don't think that it's going to happen, because even if school opens up, we know that there is a percentage of our parents, families who don't want, you know, the students to come back. So I do have a poll, and I will launch that later, and I'm gonna just punt it over to Sheryl, unless Christine, you wanted to jump in.
I just see a sort of timely question from Brandon. I just wondered, he had a question about, basically the question about, you know, moving back to traditional blended fully. Brandon, you can just ask this yourself, but he asked about if the swivel device you will purchase for each classroom.
Okay.
Yeah, so, you know, that's a discussion in our district too. I think that's the first thing they kind of go to, right, is trying to replicate what happens in the classroom virtually. That's the first step of any of our instructional leaders.
Yes.
And, you know, getting there is very difficult because even as a teacher myself, I try to think back on, you know, even when I had IEP or, you know, not IEP students, but I had students in school suspension, right? And I had to create all their stuff separately, and then I had to go give it to them, and all the time that added to my day. And then we've done some distance learning, virtual learning with teachers, and the amount of time that adds to their day to get the technology to start and do all of that stuff is cumbersome. And so along with that, the question also is, you know, sustainability. You know, these swivel devices have to, you know, be connected. You know, that technology department needs to get those in. They're not cheap. Even the ones you set in the middle of the room and they just rotate 360, they're still not cheap. And we're a district of, you know, 1,500 teachers. And if you're going to do that for 6 through 12, you got to offer something for the elementary staff too. So it's that you know, the blend between asynchronous and synchronous, you know, instruction, and how do you do that? That's the biggest question for me today, is really, you know, when we talk about going back to school, we have, you know, fully virtual, which might be a choice. We'll have a blended model, which, you know, maybe they come to school certain days and then they're asynchronous on other days. And then you have fully traditional, the kids that come back, and we allow that. But then really the biggest hurdle, which is, you know, the kids that they have a family member that contracted the virus, and now they're required to stay home. So now you've taken them out of their class that is on a certain learning path. And do you put them into the blended model? Do you put them into all virtual? Do you then say, okay, well, then that one is now, the teacher's now having to teach them virtually and their class in you know, in the same way? And if that's the case, that's going to happen along all of our courses. I mean, if you look at, you know, 19,000 students, we're going to have a swivel in every class, because those things are going to be affected or wall classroom that we have.
Yes. The plan isn't perfect, and I don't think any of us have a perfect plan, but we have to do something. And I think, just like you said, there is a differing of opinions for those of us who are in tech and those of them who are in instructional design, or, you know, that part is, oh, this is easy. We're going to take this device on the stand, and well, you can't see it because of my background, but take this device on the stand, and we're going to pair it with the teacher, and we're going to have 15 kids in front of the teacher and maybe 40 kids virtually with the teacher, and the teacher has to manage that. And so that may be okay for, someone who's tech savvy and has good classroom management skills, but it may be a little difficult for someone who doesn't. I also realize that some of the teachers who we may have doubted before may take this and run with it. This may be the ideal platform for them, and they just may blow it out of the water. We just don't know. And I'm afraid that if we don't have a backup plan, we're not going to do what we need to do. So that's why we have a backup plan. We've tossed around every other day, which the teachers seem to like. We talked about half days, but we had to talk about what does that look like in terms of operational costs. We've also talked about every other week, a 4-day week with extended days. We've tossed around several things, and to be completely transparent, our high school may do all of those based on what they're offering. They may have some classes where they're completely virtual. They may have some classes where, they just come once a week or every other week to check in. It just depends on what they're offering. Our high school does some awesome, great things, unique things, thinking out of the box. And that was my poll everywhere here that I have built. It's like, what are y'all doing? Do you think that you're going to return to school in August? It's August for us, September for many of you. And if you're not, then how does that look? Will you be virtual or remote with all students? Will you have half day, every other day? Christine, should I launch this to see?
Well, should we do that? Cheryl, would be helpful to do that before your presentation and kind of.
Let me get through it, and then I think
no
we
problem.
can have a healthier conversation. I just
Sure.
add real quick,
Yeah,
Brandon,
that's great.
Sure.
that I think what we're talking about is a grand experiment. And I think it's very, very dangerous to experiment with education. But quite frankly, I think we're all in the same boat. And I think Tracy said it very adeptly when she said, what we don't know that we don't know. I mean, you could say that 10 times. And so I think there's going to be a lot of trial and error, just like there was here at the beginning. People were standing up, learning management systems and teaching, and some were saying, the teachers get online at 8 o'clock in the morning and you stop at 3. Unrealistic, parents complaining. So I think what we're in, some people might say this is a big revolution. I think this is an evolution. I think we're evolving every day and every week. And a lot of it depends on what will the community and the learning bear. And so, Tracy, we're going to be watching you because you're our experiment and you can tell us if this works or not. But I think there's a massive experiment going on in every school district. I heard from Miami-Dade in the last session I was in about some of the things they're doing. Well, they have hundreds of thousands of students, lots of staff. So I think we're in an experiment. I'm going to share my screen real quickly and just kind of get through. I don't know what I'm going to get through here, but I'm going to try to find my files here, if I can. Hold on, give me a break.
While you're doing that,
Keep going, yeah.
did you, are you buying those for every classroom, those swivels? Or are you making a checkout every half situations? Have you guys tackled that yet?
So we have ordered, we ordered 6 because there were 2 different visions. So I was ordering 5 for a group of teachers that were already working on the recorded videos, those that we would use. And so we've since ordered 55, and we don't think that all the teachers will do this. We know that there will be, our plan is that a group of teachers will be doing this, not every teacher. So there will be a gathering of certain teachers for each grade level, depending on who is being taught virtually. And then those teachers will have the virtual learning kits that would include a swivel and some other things.
I don't know where these slides are. I'm having a technological breakdown here. And
There they are.
Oh, good. The key is I used to be a CTO. So I'm going to do similar to, well, let me see. I think I can share the whole thing and let us show it. Thank you, Ms. Tracy, for showing me that. So anyway, just kind of planning. I think the key is planning is helter-skelter. And I think we're all in the middle of it. So I think that's why this seminar topic is so important. But if you get to the point of, okay, here's the deal. What are we going to do? What to do? It's a question mark all up in the air. And Tracy in Mississippi, they're working hard and they've got some ideas. But I think everybody, based on what your status was when this started, says, okay, now we have to go. Because what we're really talking about in blended learning is what my friend Kathleen McClaskey talks about is personalized learning. So basically, we're almost having to do an IEP for every student because every student's in a different place. I love the Christensen Institute. You're going to get these slides. You can look at some of this, but the key is that we as formal educators have to decide how are we going to blend it up. Tracy's going to do one thing. Brandon, you may do another. Adam, Paul may do a different thing. And so it's all connected to make it an integrated learning experience. And this is hard as heck because, as Tracy said, we don't know what kids are doing. We don't know what kind of house they're living in. We don't know who some of the kids are living with. We don't know if they're using it on a phone or if they've got a big old screen because mom and daddy use some of their rebate or their money from the federal government to buy a big, huge screen, We don't know, and that's the problem, is we are trying to blend learning when we don't know what's at the other end. So these are just, again, I'm not gonna read all these to you because you're gonna get these slides, but these are seven concepts that you need to think about, and certainly objectives, that teachers have to have. The concept of you can't just sit in front of a camera in a Zoom and talk to kids. You've got to have a variety of tools. Kids have got to be engaged. These kids are sitting at home gaming all day long on Xboxes. They're not going to listen to Miss Abshire go, well, okay, boys and girls, today, open up your textbook. Not going to happen. So they need to be able to collaborate. And another key point to this whole blended learning experiment is that there has to be clear communication about expectations, not just to the students, but to the parents. So this has to be a two-way communication that, quite frankly, we never had to do before. You got the kids that come to school, thank you, mama, drop them off, and then we'll see you at report card time, or we'll have we have to have two conferences a year, and especially in high school and middle school, that's the only time you see some of the parents. But that's a shift that's happened. We've got to talk to these parents and know what's going on and try to mesh and blend our blended learning. The resources have to change. We can't just use the same ones we've been using because back to that concept of we've got to engage them. And we could do a whole seminar, maybe not Tracy and I, but a whole lot of people on assessment strategies because it changes exponentially when you're all online. You can't walk around and see what they're doing and redirect a child and reteach. They're in a small group with 2 or 3 kids. So you have to think about these concepts. And I'd ask you to think about these, in terms of elements of success. And these are some for your consideration around school-based elements. Tracy's talked about some of these. The PD is a big deal because, as Tracy said, some of our teachers, they were in Google. Look, in our district, Microsoft Teams, using Blackboard Collaborate, they all been trained in Blackboard. Some of them fell apart because they really had not been using it with intentionality. They put up a web link, put up a homework. Here's a link to Khan Academy, but it wasn't a curriculum, an online curriculum that was supplemented in any way. So, the flexibility piece is we're all going to have to think about how are we going to do this different? How are we going to have rigor? And how are we going to have intentionality about everything we do? The space and flexibility thing, Tracy, I don't even know, 13 kids in the classroom. I taught 2nd and 4th in kindergarten, and then I taught high school fully online. And some of those children, that fully online high school course, I had to drive over to the school, get their principal to call them in because they were like, what were we supposed to do? I was like, how many emails have you gotten? And I didn't even ever think I'd have to call a high school parent's mama, but I was on the phone with mamas. So this whole thing about space and how are you going to blend the curriculum and what's the blended day or week or month going to look like? Again, back to those question marks. Too many of these to read, but these are things I would recommend to you to think about in terms of online curriculum elements that are critical to making sure you have a successful blended platform or process that helps every student be successful. And the other thing is that helps your employees, your teachers, your professional aides, your principals, not just go into a stress, manic depression. Because I think a lot of people are not considering the fact that this whole new learning environment is stressing our employees to the max. And some of them are holding it together and some are not holding it together too well.
Some are falling apart.
Falling apart. In addition to the fact they maybe have a husband working at home, 3 kids at different levels, they may be caring for an elderly parent or relative. And I just think we have to think very differently about what we do. And these are some of the elements you can refresh on later. And then the concept, Tracy went into it so well about who's on the planning team. These are some recommendations of people that absolutely should be there. You know, I go back to this PTA members. If we don't have parents on board when we try to pull this in, trust me, they will create a Facebook group and they will tear you and your district apart.
Yes.
And it's so easy. Social media is so easy. They will tweet about you. They will Facebook. They may even do Instagram pictures about you. But if you get them on board, that parent community can be your biggest asset in a blended learning environment. And to close down real quickly so we can get to discussions, the key is the kind of teachers we have. And those of you who've been doing technology forever like me, 30 years worth of it, you know there are all these people that fall into different categories. And so you need to figure out who your people are and who will move up these ranks, because you've got to get these people to at least being early adopters and innovators, because you're asking them to turn their world upside down. Well, you were a great teacher in the classroom, but now you're terrible. You're falling apart online because you don't have the skill set. So think about these. You're going to get these slides. You can have all this. I also put together a list of resources from some of the information I pulled. These will help you. Here's how to contact me. I'm going to quit sharing and we can get back to some conversation.
Yeah, Tracy, I'm going to launch your poll and just take a quick poll of the room, see where people are. We've got about 5 minutes left, but this is a lounge. We can kind of hang out if we want to stay a little longer and chat. So you want to launch the poll, and it'll be interesting to see some of the feedback and results.
All right. Let me share my screen. Do you see the poll information?
Yes.
Okay.
So you want to scan that code? Is that our instruction here?
Well, what's supposed to happen is the when I launch it, it's supposed to give you the information.
I think
Okay.
you have to go into play mode.
Well, and when I went into presentation mode earlier, it pops up when I present it. It should be there. So that's
Yeah,
the mode I was in.
we can go, yep, go there, you go.
If not, we can just talk about it.
Let's talk about it. How about
Yeah.
that?
That's cool. So, so thank you both. Amazing information. So, so I think everyone was so enamored with it and listening and absorbing all of this information. We will make those slides available. So much great content there. So, you know, seeing some comments, we're kind of all in the same boat. And does anyone want to share about any specific questions or maybe any plans that you have in your district about how you're planning back to school? Pretty much.
Yeah, maybe a best practice, Christine.
Yeah, I
Somebody's
would
got
love
a
to
plan
do
or
that.
they've met with somebody and they're like, okay,
Yeah.
we're going to try this. We may not work, but we're going to give it a shot. What are
Yeah.
some of y'all thinking about? Hey, Sue.
Hi, I'll share. We have a committee that is just really started this week. So I'm in New Jersey. We're planning to go back, but at the same time, we really have no idea if we're going back. But we're planning to go back, and I think there isn't any concrete plan. But the idea of it being a hybrid week possibly has been thrown out there. 2 days, 2 days of distance learning, 2 days of being in school, and then the 5th day of actually having you know, students with IEPs and BSI attending. You know, I think they're expecting some backlash about whatever is going to be planned, but that's it, and that is all about distancing. You know, you can't have everybody in the building at one time, so that's where that comes from. But I think also the idea of being prepared for not being there. And I think everyone, it doesn't even have to be spoken, you just know that that's the deal. So sort of having plan A, plan B, and then plan C is like, I don't know what they're gonna throw at me, but gotta get ready for that. But, you know, as a school, I don't really see, I mean, we're all stressed because this is such a, you know, such a difficult situation, but I think the fact that we're a team and we're willing to work hard and learn what we need to learn has helped a lot. And having great leadership, saying, hey, this is all new is great too. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think the key is understanding that we don't know. And having the backup plans, Tracy, like you were talking about, I think that's what's going to save us all, is the fact that it is going to be chaos, but we've lived through chaos since the beginning of March. And you know what? We're still standing.
Yeah.
Schools are standing, kids are standing, parents, some understand, the ones that don't, we're facilitating that. And the fact that we're doing something, I think it is amazing that educators across this country have stood up and delivered on something they didn't know one thing about, some of them. And amazing things are happening for kids. Some are getting more than others, you know, but we're going to keep going. It's kind of a continuous improvement process. But Sue, I think this is always glass half full, girl. I don't see this thing going away. I'm looking at all the data around infection rates and reinfection rates, and don't need to be sad, Sheryl, on the call, but I think everybody's got a plan that even if you go back, and I saw a colleague that says, Kara says their school's open next week. I bet you Kara's got a plan that they go back and 2 weeks later, a bunch of teachers get sick or kids get sick. People are gonna riot, close these schools. I mean, they want them open now, but something happens, it's gonna be close the schools. So I think we've gotta have a toolkit, a basket full of ideas, and we're ready to, pivot at any time.
Yeah, we're anticipating having to, go back home in October or November. So we're trying to work on a plan for that.
Who else? Sue, did you have something else? Or
I
Frank?
just want to add, when people say, and I keep hearing this, I've heard it from the beginning, teachers or educators, this whole thing about being amazing. I think that this is who educators are, and we've never had a chance to prove ourselves. I think we all see the silver lining in this tragedy. And, you know, we don't really think about how much we juggle each day and how we just never know what Johnny's going to do or what's going to happen. And this is who we've become. We've become these people who it's like, okay, what do I need to do? So, yeah.
Frank, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just kind of, and Sue made me think of this too. I think, Sue, you're right. I don't think teachers give themselves enough credit for just how creative you need to be. I mean, you just kind of get the job done, whatever it takes. And just to talk about a little bit what you guys, we're trying to plan on, same idea. Like, we have to be ready, whether we're back physically or not, to turn on a dime. So whatever our plans have to be, they have to be something that, and a little bit like what Keisha Ray said in first session I was in, it's blended learning. We have to do it whether we're there or not. So we have to put this in our practice every day, and we have to be able to turn on a dime if they say, you're going home again. So
Frank, where are you? Where are you, Frank?
I'm in southern New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's something that that we really just have to make sure that we create this plan that is sustainable, like you said, like something we're going to do, but it's got to be part of our everyday practice. We can't just flip to it. We've got to be doing it every day or a lot, and then if we need to flip to at-home instruction, we say, okay, it's blended, so here it is again. We're doing this same thing. You're just not there.
Yeah.
Kara, can you put your camera on and talk about in Vancouver Island, Canada, you're going back next week. So I know you have a plan. Everybody else is like, let's keep up the plan. But Kara's like, we have a plan. Next week, this is what we're doing. Share with us.
Okay, so what's happening next week is our K-5 classes are going back. Our grade 6, 7s are, our elementary schools go to grade 7. So our K-5 classes, depending on how many kids are going to come in, it seems we put out a survey. Almost every parent in our district, surprisingly, filled out the survey. We have about 4,500 kids.
Right.
And we've got about 49% coming back. So we've split the classes into 2 groups. One group will go Monday, Tuesday. This is for the K-5s. The other group will go Thursday, Friday. But we also have the children of essential service workers who are allowed, those kids are allowed to go all week. And so they'll be going on the Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, the teachers will be, in the morning, they're supposed to connect with their online students, and in the afternoon will be their prep time. And there will be a different teacher teaching the essential service kids that day. So it'll be our teacher librarians, our non-enrolling teachers, music teachers, the VPs, the principals, they'll have to teach those days as well. For grade 6s, grade 6 and 7 are going back 1 day a week. And our high school teachers have opened the high school for appointments. So they've put schedules online, and the kids are filling out schedules and going in for appointments at this point. And again, we realize that it could all end and it could all, boom, change in a week, who knows. But you know what, I just have to say to everyone here, it is so great to hear that we're on the other side of the country from some of your different country from you, and we're using the same things. We use Teams and going through the same stuff. Thank you.
Thank you for
Great.
sharing that.
Who else? Somebody else has a conversation, a little comment, I bet.
And I will just give us a time check here. I don't know why I've disappeared. I'm still here. Why am I not here anymore? Anyway, I know it's disappeared. So do we have another session starting at the top of the hour? But as I said earlier, we are this is a lounge. So you can get up and stretch, and you can, but you can hang out and chat as well. So I'm going to put up just the next, share my slide just so you can see what's coming up next, but keep on chatting if you like.